Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. Dan here as usual, and I'm on my own today for a solo episode, and it's a really exciting one because whilst we've all been talking about the search transformation, how AI and large language models are transforming the way that buyers use search, research, and they evaluate differently, and it's entirely true, but up until now we haven't had much research which proves the way that people are actually using AI and how they search, and the changes from our traditional beloved blue links and keyword based approaches to long contextual prompts that give very specific answers. And on today's episode, I'm going to bring some research which, by the way, hasn't had a ton of engagement. So I think most people listening probably haven't heard this research yet. So we'll obviously link it in the show notes and the description here. But it's research from a guy called Metian, and he's an SEO professional. He's been writing on his own blog for over a decade. And he essentially found that, like many people, ChatGPT chats were actually being indexed by search. The temporary chats were being indexed, and these were accessible for a short period of time by doing a site search. So site:/chatgpt.com temporary chat, and then it would bring up thousands of temporary chats that have been created on ChatGPT and were accessible to the public. And that is what he was able to dig into in order to create this research report, which really digs into how people are using ChatGPT to search. What are the kind of prompts they're using? How detailed are they being? What kind of context are they using? What kind of language and approach are they actually using to get the answer out? And that's exactly what I'm going to run through in this episode and give you an overview of what's in this report and what we can kind of find and take into our AI SEO and marketing strategy as a whole as we move into this new era of search and as we try and get more brand mentions and really lean into the way that people are researching, searching, and discovering information right now. Before we get into the episode today, here's a quick word from our sponsors, HubSpot. You don't become the world's most valuable women's sports franchise by accident. Angel Cities Football Club did it with a little help from HubSpot. When they started, data was housed across multiple systems. HubSpot unified their website, email marketing, and fan experience all in one platform. This allowed their small team of just 3 to build an entire website in just 3 days. The result? Nearly 350 new signups a week and 300% database growth in just 2 years. Visit HubSpot.com to hear how HubSpot can help you grow better. As I mentioned before, this research was done independently by an SEO expert. It wasn't conducted by OpenAI themselves or a really well-known SEO publication or anything like that. But I still think the methodology has a lot of grounds to be useful for everybody listening to this and most marketers out there, to be honest. So as I mentioned, for a short period of time, you're able to access temporary chats on ChatGPT. And that's exactly what Metian did in this research. So he was able to essentially collect thousands, the exact amount within this research was 1,827 ChatGPT prompts, was able to extract the question parameter, essentially the exact user prompt, and analyze what they looked like and similarities and differences throughout them. And what we could find in this are some really interesting shifts in what's happening. So firstly, the thing to look at is the actual length of the prompt. So the average prompt length found within this research was 42 words, and the median was 11. When we compare that to the average query of a Google search, which is typically 2 to 4 words. So what we're saying here is that ChatGPT queries are 5 to 20 times longer than traditional Google searches. And I'm not surprised by that in the slightest. I don't know about everybody listening here, but I'm now a huge fan of dictation to ChatGPT and other AI tools as well. So the amount of context I'm giving these tools is absolutely incredible. I'm probably prompting over 100 words most times, giving it as much context as possible to give me the best answer possible. When we compare that to a typical Google search, which is going to be, something like best CRM software for manufacturers, even that's quite long. It could just be best CRM software. Compare that to the ChatGPT style prompt, which would be, give me the top 5 CRM softwares for a manufacturer. We are a 500 person company operating out of Florida. We've just raised Series C funding. We're moving into the next stage of growth. We currently have an ERP system on this. We currently have this marketing automation tool. Give me a CRM that fits the needs for all of that. The amount of context and extra information you're able to give ChatGPT, and that people are giving ChatGPT because it's proven in this research, is absolutely off the charts. And users are now trusting AI more to synthesize multiple steps into this single interaction, not just point to resources where you need to go and then get that information for yourself as you would in Google. They're trusting AI to give the answer, the full answer itself. Aside from the length of the prompt, the other shift that's come out of this research is the shift in intent. Instead of asking questions, more and more people are asking commands. So actually 75% of the prompts found within this research were commands and not questions. So when we think of how we might ask Google in the past, how do I fix a 404 error code? People using ChatGPT and other large language models are uploading that error prompt and that information to ChatGPT and saying, fix this, fix this prompt right here. Which is a really interesting shift away from the question-based approach that has always, stood the test of time within Google. Within the research itself, and I'm not going to embarrass myself by trying to explain a lot of these examples because they're kind of debugging commands for code. A lot of them are, so like fix class solution, fix this boolean that contains this. That is erroring. Like these kind of prompts are being surfaced within this research, and it's a really interesting. Well, to be fair, there's some persona based ones as well. So act as a recruiter and write me a job post for a senior React developer. I want you to act as a food critic. I will describe a restaurant and you will review it. So again, these are actionable based prompts rather than questions in there. And the difference here might seem subtle at first in the way that we're commanding instead of asking questions, but actually the outcome here in response is huge. Instead of asking for instructions in ChatGPT, they're asking for execution. It's not how do I go about doing this thing, it's look at this thing, here's the context, do it for me. It's a complete shift in user psychology away from searching for something, searching for the answer that I can execute myself, and outsourcing the actual doing and the execution of something. The kind of mindset shift and the psychological behavior is completely different between searching in Google and researching and getting the answer yourself to expecting ChatGPT and a large language model to do it for you. I won't spend too long on this point because it's less relevant to this audience, but ChatGPT within this research was used heavily by developers and technical experts. So 40% of the task-orientated prompts were around development tasks. And I think it's clear to see why. ChatGPT is the Stack Overflow expert. It contains all of that information. It's the mentor, it's the code converter, it's the configuration guide, all in one place. And if we think about how developers would have once searched and found solutions to problem, it would have been multiple searches on Google, scanning Stack Overflow answers, trying something, seeing if you get an error, trying something else. But on ChatGPT, paste the problem in, paste the error code that's in there and your code along with it, get the solution right there and then. It's really interesting to see how developers are leading the way in this kind of shift. And they're showing us how I think other industries will start to follow along and collapse multi-step search and research into one simple AI interaction and execution at the back of it. This podcast is brought to you by Blend. We're a B2B website and demand generation agency. We work with ambitious businesses just like yours to create and execute effective demand generation strategies that drive pipeline for your business. We also recognize that your website is the most important asset you have in marketing. So we specialize in building scalable websites on HubSpot that convert the demand that you've created. If you want to find out more about our services and see real results that we've generated for businesses, visit blendb2b.com. The next really interesting insight, which I think is more relevant to this audience too, is the change in commercial queries and in particular how hyper-localized and high intent they're getting too. So one example within this was somebody looking for a Shanghai filter supplier, and they used language within the prompt that said Shanghai high temperature resistant high efficiency filter. And what's interesting in there is how local it is and how specific it is too. It's not just a simple search for a filter supplier in general. It's got the location and the particular use case that they're trying to solve with that filter. And the difference in the expectation of output here is what's really interesting too, because not only are buyers using more specific language, getting more localized and hyper specific about the actual challenge they're trying to solve, the expectation of response is not that it's going to trigger a load of resources and websites that you then go and explore and look at the outputs yourself, that actually users are expecting AI itself to filter out these suppliers, compare the prices, and present the best solutions back to them with all of that reasoning in place itself. And right now, most businesses are not optimized for this kind of search. They're optimized for generic-based searches where the context of the actual application, the context of the industry is not being applied to the search, because typically that's not how Google search has been set up. It's not how people have searched in the past. But as more people turn to AI as they are now and get more localized and get more hyper-specific, the actual opportunity to create more specific content around that is going to present itself. And I still think this content has to be done so in a high value way. We can't afford to just be publishing crap content with low value at a scale that is going to become unsustainable, and I predict in the future will be seen as, untrustworthy information in the eyes of AI and other search engines that are using this approach. I think there will still need to be a level of trustworthiness given to a piece of information. So it's important that you follow the same practices that you've always created with content and have it be, high authority with a unique perspective on it. But it does need to be thought as, taking the approach that somebody is now using AI to search and they're becoming more localized and more specific with their prompts and giving it extra context. And this needs to be taken into account with content that you're creating now. If you want to be being mentioned, if you want your brand to be mentioned within the answers to those prompts. The other interesting find within this is how people are getting the AI to role play as a particular persona. So within this, we had examples of food critic, recruiter, Stack Overflow poster, time travel guide. There were some weird ones that this threw up. But what people are trying to do is essentially program the AI's behavior at the query level. And if we think about, Google never did this. You couldn't tell Google to be a food critic. You couldn't tell Google to be a recruiter, to act as a recruiter. You could find food critic reviews. You could find recruiters and see what they were doing, but you couldn't make the engine role play as one. And it's really interesting to see how people are using AI in order for it to act as them or act as somebody who they perhaps report into, or act as anybody else in their life that they then might need to get a specific response back. And I think we can take this into marketing to see how users are acting potentially as the board, acting as particular people who need to sign off budget, to act as their customer. And all of this can be used by us to establish, actually, this is the kind of content we need to create in order to serve our entire buying group, the buying committee, because not only are we just targeting perhaps one specific persona, even them themselves are trying to synthesize being other people in the business, and we need to play into that too. There are some suggestions within this research to basically tell you, what you should be doing from a content perspective now in order to be seen by these AI tools and ChatGPT and be referenced in there. I would say go and check out the article for yourself. There are some things in there that I don't think are proven yet to work, but some things that I have seen work for clients of ours, and in tests that we've had ourselves that I can speak to, are things like schema information. So schema has always been around in search. It's always existed, but it's never really been used to a certain extent by B2Bs in particular. A lot of e-commerce stores employ schema data for products, but a lot of B2Bs don't use schema on their website at all. And large language models, when they're looking at information on a website, are using schema in order to identify the type of content that they're extracting, and it makes it easier for them to parse the content and bring out passages and specific information into answers that they're then serving. Other things are, this is just a standard SEO practice, which is, a good heading structure. So making sure that you have H1s, H2s, H3s, and also a summary of a particular article at the start that can be easily, again, like what we're thinking here is passage retrieval. How easy would it be for an AI to quickly look at this snippet of information and pull that as a summary and pull out maybe your brand within that summary too, and a particular short, concise executive summary, and in addition to that, bullet points to explain any features and benefits and options, can then extract even more information from that if needed. But the summary is really a place to be cited as a particular source. Again, another thing that I just find really interesting about this research is I initially thought that people would be using AI more in a question-based approach. So, who is the best X for this? I have this problem, how do I solve it? But actually, what this research has found, and let's take this research with a pinch of salt as well, let's bear that in mind, that there are only 1,827 prompts being analysed within this research, and there are over 1 billion prompts actually being used every day in ChatGPT. So it's a fraction of the actual data, but it does give us insight into how people are using it. And yeah, I was under the impression that more and more people were using ChatGPT to have more question-based approaches and bring out more answers. But the fact is that more and more people are using it to actually execute something, to do it for them, instead of getting a response like you might in Google to a particular question, where in ChatGPT you can add some more context, but you're still just getting an answer for you. Actually getting it to execute on that thing is being seen more and more. So yeah, there might be less room for question-based prompting in the things that you're tracking and the things that you're trying to influence, and actually more command-based things. Go away, execute this thing, do this research, bring it back to me, instead of just answering your questions and then you having to do more of the execution after that too. I think overall, if we combine everything we already know about the way that large language models retrieve information, the way that buyers and everyone really is using ChatGPT in order to surface information, we already understand that prompts are going to be much longer as this research surfaces. We understand that prompts are going to be much more contextual. They're going to include things like their persona information, their industry information, their company details, a lot more context that gives a more specific answer and will execute a specific task more effectively. We need to now be thinking about how do we bring that level of thinking into the content that we create. So instead of just having, generic blogs answering a particular, high level topic or idea, even a pillar page doing that, even a, sector page doing that. How do we now bring in this persona information, this industry information into the content that we're creating? And that does mean doing more. That does mean being more personalized. And in order to be visible in AI and be found within AI, we're going to be needing to use AI in order to, feed the engine with information. Like, as we've spoken about many times on this podcast, using things like Claude projects in order to extract that persona information and the way that they might go about prompting, again, maybe even based on this research, then creating very specific content based on those prompts in order to be found, be visible within the answers that are generating out of that. Like, that is where content creation is going. Again, I wish there was more proven research out there on the approach to take right now, but everyone is testing, everyone is iterating. We're getting kind of closer and closer as we go along, as this kind of research develops as well. The first thing we have to do is understand how people are using the actual search engine itself in order to see, okay, how do we provide information that then gets served and answered? That also requires understanding the engine. All of these pieces are coming together, though, really nicely, and allows you to do more testing, more iteration to actually come up with a fundamental solution, a repeatable solution that you can do time and time again. And there are things that we're testing at Blend. Even if you just go to our blog, you'll see some of the things just naturally that are coming out in the tests that we're doing there to be found for more specific queries and high intent queries too, commercial queries. But yeah, I think everybody after this episode should absolutely go and have a look at this research for yourself and start to think about your content strategy and shifting it to this more, persona, location driven approach that is being used by, a lot more people now within their search experience. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Demand Decoded. As always, if you did like it, we'd appreciate a follow, a subscribe on whatever channel you're listening to. It really helps us out, and to see that you're enjoying this content just makes us want to do more too. If you wanted to comment on what you think, we're seeing in AI, what your thoughts were on the report, how you see things going, I'd love to read those and be part of the conversation too. So yeah, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.